Hi, welcome back to Love at First Right. I'm Victoria Dougherty, a Cold War historical thriller writer who is endeavoring to write a great, epic romance. And it's more than a romance. I mean, that's why I'm calling it epic, right? It has, oh, good Lord, it has thrills, it has adventure, it has history, it has a story that has magic in it, and will go on for several books. And so this is a huge endeavor, and that's why I started this vlog, because it's a way of just sitting here and talking about all the things that are necessary um, for a story like this to really give the reader the ride of their life. This week. Well, a lot has gone on this week. First of all, I went on vacation with my family for a couple of weeks. And one of the great things about getting away from your work is that you get away from your work, right? Um, you come back with a fresh perspective, and it's really hard for me to unplug. I love to think about my stories, and it's so often that they're on my mind. But this time, I did really a pretty good job, at least for me, of just getting away and not thinking too much about the story that I'm writing. And it was the best thing that I could have done, because when I came back, I really did have a fresh perspective. And what's great too is that there were a couple of things that happened on my vacation that really informed my writing, and they were a great lesson. The first thing is we took our kids cliff diving. We went to the beach, and there were these cliffs. They weren't that high. They were maybe about 40 feet high. And my son does this kind of stuff all the time, because there's this quarry near our house, and he and his friends go and they jump off these cliffs. And so my 16-year-old, my 14-year-old, and my 11-year-old went up there, and of course they wanted me to video them. And I did. And what was so interesting about it was that it was basically, the same act, the same scene that happened with, well, three different people from three different perspectives, and happened in its own way three different times, even though the whole thing lasted all about 3 or 4 seconds each time. And that really inspired me to come back and look at my scenes in a different way too, and try to imagine what the other characters are thinking, and perhaps even try to sort of reimagine the way I've gone about approaching that scene, because I am writing this in the first person from my main character's point of view. And anyway, what was funny about it was, okay, so the three went up there. And my son, who same old hat, he does this all the time, right? Well, my middle daughter was having none of it, and she just was determined that she was going to be the first person to jump off that cliff, so that she could say, I jumped before my brother did. So just as he was getting ready to jump, she pushed him aside and she jumps. So after that, my son jumps, and he's basically like, a boulder falling into the water. And then comes time for my 11-year-old. And my 11-year-old is terrified. And excuse me. And her sister says to her, she's trying to get her to do it in all sorts of different ways. She is bribing her. She is taunting her. And then finally she says, Mom doesn't think you're going to do it. And my 11-year-old jumped right off. And then she did it again like 2 or 3 times. And it was just so fun to watch. And in fact, I'm going to post one of the cliff divings on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested, you can have a look and watch the cliff jumping. But as I said, it really gave me a great perspective to come home to, and also made me realize, as I was listening to the exchange between my two daughters, and I was listening to all the different ways that my one daughter was trying to bait the other, I realized, if I were to write that scene, the first time you write that scene when you're writing a story, you would include everything. You would include everything that she was being taunted and tempted by, whether it was candy or whatnot. And then, of course, the climax would be, Mom doesn't think you're going to do it. And I realized that after you edit the scene, the only thing that you're going to keep is that last line, Mom doesn't think you're going to do it. I mean, you'll set it up and you'll have the kids there and you'll have the daughter who's terrified. And then you'll have the middle daughter say, Mom doesn't think you're going to go. And then she'll jump. And that's the nut of the scene. And that's what progresses the story. And that's what keeps the tension alive instead of dragging it down with too much dialogue or fluff. And so that was an incredible lesson to me. And I want to give you an example of that, because one of the things that's so important, I think I'm on about my 5th edit now, and it is just so important to go through and get rid of the extra, what slows the story down even a little bit, even unintentionally, because you can have a beautiful paragraph that read on its own is terrific, but within the context of a long story, if you have too many of those, and they become cumbersome, and if you can whittle away at them a bit, edit them, it makes the story sing along. It makes it move at that frenetic pace that you want, even as you use description as a way of really letting the reader savor what's happening. So anyway, this morning I was working on 2 very small paragraphs, and I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. The desert is weeks in that direction alone. Ottoman stands with one hand at his waist and another pointing randomly at the horizon. His hands are dark with soot, bleeding like mine, his fingernails worn down and broken. 40 words. After tinkering with it, a little bit, and I really do mean a little bit, 15, 20 seconds, maybe 30 tops. The desert is weeks in that direction alone. Oddman points randomly at the horizon. His hand is black with soot, bleeding, fingernails worn down and broken, like mine. 28 words. They're really not a whole lot different. You're probably listening to them thinking, I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You could keep both, they're fine. And they are fine. But again, in the context of a long story, of a novel, those 12 words in that one paragraph mean a great deal when it comes to pacing. So this comes to my second revelation on this trip. On the way home, when you're sitting in the airplane now, they give you choices as to which movies you're going to watch. And my daughter, my 11-year-old, decided that she wanted to watch the 1993 Bill Murray movie Groundhog's Day. Spoiler alert, I am going to be talking about what happens in Groundhog's Day. So if you haven't seen the movie and you want to see the movie, you might want to revisit this after you see the movie. But anyway, so just to refamiliarize you with the plot, Bill Murray is this weatherman who every year has to go to this Groundhog's Day festival in this small town on the East Coast, which he despises, and have this, do this silly, goofy sort of weatherman segment for his local TV station. And this year, something very unusual happens, which is he wakes up to this day over and over and over again for like 30 or 40 years, the exact same day. Now, Harold Ramis, who wrote it, is a real master because, boy, to write about the same day over and over again, that takes skill. And to make it as fun and interesting and wonderful and delicious as he did is just masterful. But so anyway, so Phil, the weatherman, played by Bill Murray, right? He at one point he even says, he said, God, I had one day where I had a date with a beautiful woman. We made love. We had a picnic. Why couldn't it be that day that I'm stuck in? Why am I stuck in this day? Because really, this was a day of minutia that he despised. This was an existential crisis kind of day because everyone he works with doesn't like him, and he has to spend the day with them, and they just keep kind of, giving little digs at him. He hates his career. He hates himself for being a weatherman. He despises this small town that he has to go back to every year. He runs into people from his high school. He can't stand them either. He's just having a bad day. And now he's stuck in this day. And the beauty of the film is that in the end, he learns how to make that the best day of his life. And that's the only thing that breaks the spell, where finally he has a wonderful day. Everyone in the town loves him. He um he has been helpful. He has made friends, and he has made the woman who, previously couldn't stand him, that he tried unsuccessfully to woo, he has made her fall in love with him and bid on him at this sort of auction where they auction off a date, and she bids everything in her checkbook. And they live happily ever after, because he wakes up the next day and it's tomorrow. He no longer has to wake up to, I Got You, Babe from Sonny and Cher, the same thing that was on the radio every single day for 30 or 40 years of the same damn day that he had to experience. And being able to enjoy that day to the fullest is what brought him finally to tomorrow. And it occurred to me how much that's like the editing process, because I am a huge proponent of a lot of edits. I think it's a great thing. The Amazon algorithms punish authors who cannot come out with a book every 6 weeks, every 3 months, whatever it is, some outrageous production schedule. And I resist that, because I think there's a place for it. God knows there are many authors who can do just a wonderful job at that, but I'm not one of them, and those aren't the stories that I write. So I love the editing process, and I love to go through the edits. I love finding the magic. I love finding the pace, and it is so much like Groundhog's Day. In fact, my daughter, my 11-year-old, said to me, she said, "Mom, are you done with your book yet?" And I said, "Well, I've written it, but no, I'm editing it now." And she said, "Why do you need to edit?" And I was finally able to point to something really tangible that she could understand and say, because it's like Groundhog's Day. You have to live that day, you have to live that manuscript over and over and over again until you find every bit of magic and just squeeze it out of there. And in the end, you have made friends, you have fallen in love, you have learned how to play the piano, which the weatherman does, and you have just drank in the sweet juice of life and of this story in every way possible. And if, for those of you writers out there who hate editing, I really, really hope that that this can inspire you to think more charitably about it, because I think that each subsequent edit is a spell you cast until finally you get the spell perfectly right. And I think if you can get that spell perfectly right, you have something to give a reader that will change their lives. So thank you, and please visit me on Patreon. Patreon is a great place to enjoy lots of exclusive work from your favorite artists, people who bring meaning into your life, and it's a really reasonable way to do so. I put all sorts of things up on my Patreon page: chapter excerpts, edits, polls, vlog episodes, essays, um, all sorts of exclusive and original content, photographs. We talk about art and war and love and grief and all the glorious mess that is life. Thank you.